and welcome to the Modern Horror Stories podcast, where we review horror movies. And today we're reviewing a real classic, which is The Exorcist, 1973, directed by William Friedkin. It's such a classic that it's going to be hard to give it spoilers because I feel most people will have seen it. However, I had not seen it until yesterday. So we're going to avoid spoiling the very ending, but there might be details in there that you'd be surprised to see if you watch the film. But we'll hand over to Dave and he'll give you a synopsis of the movie.
So essentially, this is the story of a 12-year-old girl who's the daughter of an actress, and she's suspected of being possessed by a demon. And I don't think it's a spoiler to find out she is possessed by a demon. It's pretty obvious from the get-go that that's the case. But she also has, it's set in the 70s, and she's part of a slightly troubled family. As I said, her mother's an actress, her father's not around. The other two main characters, besides the daughter and the mother, are a priest who has lost his faith and a priest who's an archaeologist. These are the four main protagonists. And essentially, it's the journey to find out how are they going to resolve this possession. And this is one of my favorite films. It's one of my favorite horror films, and it's one of my favorite films. It's close to being a perfect film. And when I think about horrors these days, they're very much like roller coaster rides. They're out to scare you and shock you, surprise you, maybe disturb you. And this film has got not much of that, really. It's much more of a drama, a horror drama, where you just dive into these four characters and it makes them super relatable, which is really an amazing achievement because these are four very unusual characters. The typical horror film will be cast of kind of everyday, usually young kids, whereas these are very extraordinary characters. This is an actress, a super famous actress, her daughter, and two priests. So these are not the sort of people you mix with on an everyday basis, but they're super relatable. And the journey with them through this film it's not super paced, but I think it's just paced perfectly. It's hard for me to find fault with this film, and so I'm going to let Alex try.
And you're going to fail if you're going to try and make me insult this film in any way. It is so near perfect. I think maybe it is perfect. And but yeah, I completely agree with you. I mean, the idea, I'm not a religious person at all, but I think Father Karras is one of the most relatable characters in the horror canon. I mean, the idea that his mother's very ill, he is having a crisis of faith. He's an entirely normal person. He is one of the rare priests I can really imagine getting a drink with, which I know is never a good way of looking at somebody, especially politicians. But he is such a relatable character, and he is such a watchable presence. And yes, no, I'm neither a priest or a 12-year-old girl, and yet both of those were entirely real, entirely relatable characters. I think what you were saying about horror films now being roller coasters, I think what this film is terror in such a pure form. It's not out to get you. It is all that fear and all that terror. It's the film just gets inside you and takes it out, as opposed to trying to enforce it on you, trying to sort of go, oh, jump scare, go on, scream, cry, do something. It just slowly breaks you down. And you feel, as you're watching the film, that same crisis of faith that Father Karras feels. You sort of slowly realize in this film that the devil exists, and you desperately want God to exist as well, because that's the only way that this can possibly have any good ending. As I say, I'm not a religious person, but that crisis of faith, that driving force that pushes Father Karras throughout the film, I just find so engaging. James, I'm particularly curious to hear from you because you read the book before you watched the film. When did you read the book, out of interest?
I read the book a long time ago. I read it 25 years ago. So
Oh wow.
it's not fresh in my memory. I have to be honest, but it was such a fantastic book. It has stuck with me, or at least 13-year-old me thought it was a fantastic book. I don't know how I'd feel about it now, but I still think it's probably a great book. I don't know how much of an impact it was that I was 13 when I read it, so I was similar age to Regan, and all of that was very new to me. All the stuff that was happening in it. Something I really appreciated about the book, again, I might be misremembering it, but I felt like it left it very ambiguous as to whether she was possessed or whether it was something else. And the whole film, the whole book, you're not 100% certain. Nobody's 100% certain. And yeah, I thought that was really interesting.
Actually, now that you've said that, I think the way the film handles that is really good in that we're all hoping it, if you're a horror fan, you're all hoping it's a real possession. And I don't think for a second, although the characters go through the routine of all the tests to find out is it something that's just a medical condition, a physical condition, they all go through that procedure. The audience is never left in any doubt for a second. It's 100% a demon. And I think that's all the stronger in terms of how the film works.
I think as a reader, I can understand enjoying the ambiguity, but as somebody who's following Father Karras's journey of regaining his faith, I can see why in the film it was, Ouija board comes out, this is a possession. This is absolutely, absolute, but because it's the demon is absolutely there, it makes Father Karras's journey, I think, through the film very, very strong, and that's what makes him one of the great characters. Whereas I can imagine in the book, the ambiguity really working for Chris MacNeil's character, for the actress, and because that terror of being just a person whose daughter is ill, and then having to sort of decide, am I going to have to sort of employ these pretty left field ideas to get my daughter well again? And so I can see that ambiguity absolutely working. But for me, because Father Karras is the main character, I think he's the main character in the film, with the story arc that goes from crisis of faith to faith. I don't think that's a spoiler, but yes, for me, it was him I was following, and the fact that possession is a real one, I think strengthens his journey, but maybe weakens Chris MacNeil's a little bit.
The acting throughout was phenomenal, and the mother's journey from everything's fine to absolute despair was incredible. Like I don't know how she had the energy to be so distraught for so much of the film. Like you said, Alex, about the terror, like she really embodied that terror and shared it with us. And for her, it was less of a mystical terror, or she wasn't really, she didn't care if it was a possession or what. She was just worried about her daughter.
Yes. And sorry, just that reminded me actually of it's I think that's one of the scariest things in horror films is when you've got a parent and they realize that there's some kind of loss of innocence. So I think in the original Child's Play film, Chucky, there's a scene where the kid, he calls his mum a bitch, and it's just absolutely horrifying. It's one of the best moments in that film, because he's this little kid and he calls his mum this word, and the shock and from the mum is just unbelievable, because that is such a terrifying idea. I think, I don't have kids, but I think the idea of having someone who is innocent and young and then being corrupted and then being defiled, it's just such a horrific idea, and it pushes against these very basic instincts that we have about protecting our children, about looking after them, about maintaining innocence, and about the inevitability that we can't just sort of keep things the way that they are. Innocence dies, and that comes through all of these horror films where there is a child at the heart of it, and that is truly terrifying, I think.
I think both of you have picked up on two things which I think one has given it longevity, and two has taken away some of its power. I think its longevity comes from just the realism of it, the performances of it. It's all played super straight. There's hardly any soundtrack to it as well. So a little bit of music, a lot of sound effects. But it's played so real. I feel that part of it has stayed quite vibrant. The part that I think perhaps has dissipated is kind of the shock element. I wonder what it was like to see a film with so many profanities coming out of a 12-year-old girl's mouth in the cinema in the 70s. I mean, I saw it in the 90s. So even then, that kind of profanity was fairly common. But I think that kind of visceral power is probably gone. But I think the drama of it really still stays with me.
It's actually interesting if you watch, I think you can see on YouTube, vox pops of people coming out of The Exorcist. And, you know, people who brought their children along go, bloody hell, I shouldn't have done that. And it's quite interesting to see how the original audience reacted to it. Because, you know, there were people fainting and crying blue murder and protesting against the film. So it had a huge impact at the time and still does today. I mean, we're still getting Exorcist films pumped out every couple of years, and not with the same quality necessarily as the original, but still kind of the hold that The Exorcist has on pop culture today and on horror films still absolutely there. It sticks with me, this film. It really does. First time I watched it, a couple of years ago on holiday actually with some friends, and we'd been out every single night. And then we just decided one night we'd stay in. None of us had watched The Exorcist before. And it completely changed me. It was an experience, that film, watching it for the first time. And what's amazing about it is there's stuff that I noticed watching it the second time that I didn't watch the first time. And I know Mark Kermode, brilliant film critic, his favourite film is The Exorcist. And he says he's watched it so many times, but every single time there's something new to find. And I absolutely felt that watching it the second time. There was stuff that came up that I hadn't noticed before. And I look forward to watching it again, to be honest, because there'll be more stuff I haven't noticed.
I have to say, I'm not a fan of the film.
All I'm going to say is you're very, very lucky we're not in the same room. Okay. I'd be throwing hands right now.
So I'm really looking forward to your score, James. So for me, this film's a clear 10. No doubt about it. Would barely change anything at all. That's my verdict on The Exorcist.
Yeah, I 10 out of 10. Sorry, James, I'm leaving you till last because I think there's going to be much funnier when we both say 10 and then you come out with 6 or something. Is it 6? Oh, God. Oh.
I'm going to give it a 5.
Oh, no.
Wow.
Oh, God. Fair enough.
And most of that 5 is for the acting. Most of the good points is for the acting.
Fair enough. What would you give the book out of 10 out of interest? I mean, I know it was quite a while ago, but...
It was quite a while ago. At the time, I would have given it a 10. And since I haven't reread it, then I have to keep the score at 10. So that's our insights into what we feel about the Exorcist movie, 1973. And tomorrow, we're going to be filming a new episode discussing 3 things that each of us would change about the film. And I can sense that that's going to be a tough one for Alex, but quite an easy one for me. So we'll be back soon with our 3 things we'll improve and another film to review. See you soon.